What would any Republican be thinking, saying this is a guy I'm going to run against? So have at it. Go ahead, waste your money, waste your time, and go ahead and lose.
Welcome back. Well, despite what you just heard from the chair of the RNC, one Republican is already preparing to challenge the president for the party's 2020 nomination, and recent history shows that could be actually a very bad sign for Mr. Trump. Since 1968, no sitting president who faced a significant primary opponent served a second term. But while those presidents battled insurgent wings of their own party, President Trump has the support of the insurgent wing and, for now, the establishment wing of the GOP. Our latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll had his job approval rating with Republicans at nearly 90%. So joining me now is former Massachusetts Republican governor and the 2016 Libertarian vice presidential nominee, Bill Weld. He's launched the exploratory committee, and as we say here, the federal government says there's no difference between exploring a run and running. So you're an active candidate for president. Fair?
Well, I'm actively exploring, Chuck, and thank you for having me here.
88% approval among those that describe themselves as Republicans today. There's no doubt it's a different group of people than it was 4 years ago. Is that not daunting?
I would say two things. First of all, if 6 months is an eternity in politics, what is 2 years? It's 4 eternities. And the other thing is a lot could depend on the shape and size of the electorate in various elections. There are 20 states where independents can cross over and take a Republican ballot. I always benefited from that in Massachusetts, and will certainly not let those 20 states go unexamined.
John McCain tried this, which is you run center left, center or whatever, but to the
center
left,
right, please.
Center right, but to the left of where the other candidate is. There's a ceiling. You hit a ceiling. You can win New Hampshire. You could do well in Massachusetts. You might pull off. As you know, though, when you get to the South, how are you going to win a vote?
I wouldn't say that I'm running to the left of anybody. I was ranked the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States when I was governor of Massachusetts in the 90s by the Wall Street Journal and the Cato Institute. So that's the good housekeeping seal of approval. And this president hasn't vetoed a dime in spending.
Does the party care about spending anymore?
They should. They should.
I hear you, but do they now?
It's a millstone around the neck of the millennial generation and the X generation. It really is. $1 trillion a year, and nobody in Washington seems to be minding the store. No household in America can spend that much more than it takes in every single year, and I think eventually people are going to wake up to that fact.
Why'd you leave the Libertarian Party? You were trying to convince them that when you switched, you meant it. You said you'd be a libertarian for life.
Well, I've always considered myself a small L libertarian. I have very good relations with people who are in that party. Most of them who have written to me have said, right on, we're with you, whether you're an R or an L. So it's not a bad relationship. But if you're going to do something to try to change what's going on in Washington in this country, you need a one-on-one, and that had to be right against Mr. Trump. Not dribbling around the court, just going right for the...
You don't think you could have actually made more of a difference by giving the Libertarians a larger voice?
I don't. I mean, we had two-term Republican governors on our ticket last time. We got 3% of the vote.
So basically that convinced you this is a two-party country whether you like it or not.
And I don't like it. I don't like what's going on in Washington. And I think, people are not addressing climate change. They're not addressing debt. They're not addressing all the jobs that are going to be lost in the next 10 years.
You don't sound like today's Republican Party. Isn't that part of the problem?
No, I don't think it's a problem. I think people are going to listen. It's absolutely true that we're going to lose 15 to 25% of the jobs in this country because of artificial intelligence and drones and machine learning and all that stuff, automated driving vehicles. And nobody's doing anything about it. We got a plan ahead there, and I've suggested we need a GI Bill for all the people who are going to be displaced workers there. No one in Washington seems to have twigged to that. There's a lot of things I'd like to do at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
You have quite a professional background when it comes to criminal cases. When it comes to the justice, you were a U.S. attorney.
Yeah.
You worked in the Justice Department back in the Reagan administration, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
How would you tackle what Bob Mueller is tackling? Or do you think the Southern District of New York is the place to go after the president here?
Well, there's been some very interesting developments recently, up to and including Jerry Nadler, Chairman Nadler's 81 letters of inquiry that went out. And a lot of them were addressed at, not at the president himself, but at the Trump organization, and was fraud engaged in to try to support that organization. And it opens up the possibility that someone could proceed against the organization, not the president himself.
Right.
I'm one of those who thinks you should not be able to haul the president off to criminal court to answer a garden variety criminal charge. The Constitution does say that even if impeached, the president remains liable for indictment and prosecution and punishment after he leaves office. So there's got to be a room someplace for criminal proceedings, but not while the man's in office. But there's no bar on going after an organization and say you're the product of mail fraud, wire fraud, which, as you know, as Rudy Giuliani, who taught me a lot, knows, are predicate offenses for a racketeering indictment.
So what you're saying is if you can't indict the president, if you're the Southern District of New York, indict the Trump Organization as an entity.
Well, I don't know enough about their evidence.
No, my point is if you did that,
it could be
then
done.
it gets and that's a way of you're trying to get at the president, but you can't legally. That's the closest you can come.
I'm not saying the evidence is there. I'm saying it could be done legally.
And then one of the other things you were telling me is that there is a statute of limitations here. So if he won a second term, that if they want to hold him accountable after the presidency, they may have to seal an indictment.
Yeah, the federal statute of limitations for most criminal offenses is 5 years, and if no one's above the law, and that's what Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution says, there has to be room for, let's say, a sealed indictment or an indictment and then no proceedings until the person leaves office, or else a president would be able to totally escape any prosecution and be above the law by having 2 terms.
All right, let me close the loop this way. What would make you decide I'm not going to do this? Why would you pull the plug?
I think that's unlikely. I'm probably going to decide in the month of April. What would have prevented me would be just absolutely no support out there. But, so far as I hear from anybody, it's right on, right on.
If Larry Hogan got in, would you get out, or would you basically
No, I would welcome...
have a buddy movie in Iowa?
Welcome him in. I would welcome in my buddy John Kasich, who I supported last time before I became a libertarian.
Is there any way you would support Donald Trump if you lost him in the primary?
I think that's a pretty long putt.
But you're not ruling it out.
It's a very long putt, but hey, I saw a 56 putt made to beat the Europeans in the Ryder Cup.
All right. Well, you're speaking his language. He does speak in golf. Bill Weld, it's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Good luck and stay safe on the trail. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.